Yep, yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of good things going on, a lot of baptisms taking place, and we're excited about that. 2 events fixing to happen in Africa that I hope y'all will pray for. One is in the Congo. They've been having war in the Congo for years, and there's a bunch of refugees. They've had to leave because they're being killed and all, and there's 52,000 refugees in Malawi from the Congo, and they're living in a camp in cardboard boxes and trash bags and things of that nature. Well, we've got permission from the government to go in and do a gospel meeting. So we got 20 gospel preachers going in there and going to stay 2 weeks. And we've got a little bit of funds for them to feed them some food and to do a little bit and trying to help them. And I'm sure we'll start a congregation, and it'll be meeting somewhere in a house that we'll have to rent. But pray for our guys. They're going into some very filthy areas, a lot of disease and things, and concentration camp. It's similar to a concentration camp as far as sanitary conditions would be concerned. And then one of the regional prisons that has over 3,000 men there at that prison. We've been going in there and doing preaching and teaching. There's a congregation of over 100 there, and the warden has given us permission. We're the only one that ever got permission to go in and do a one-day gospel meeting to preach to all 3,000 of those inmates. And one of the things that they requested, they don't have soap, so we've sent funds to buy 1,300 bars of soap and several little bags of salt because they have to cook their own food, and going to provide lunch for them that day. So we've already got a congregation there, but we feel like a lot of good things will happen from that meeting. So please keep those events in your prayers.
Brother Ron, before all the refugees come to that place, do they have a place for water or anything?
But it's just there in the city area, so they've got some areas that they can go pump the water. But most areas, most cities of any size, even if you had a city of a 500,000, to put 53,000 more in it would be a strain on most cities. And they're there in Lilongwe, which is the capital city. It's a big city, but I know that's putting strain on them, and their government probably gives them a little bit of food. They probably get one meal a day. So we're hoping that the war will be over soon and they can go back to the Congo. But if we can get 400 or 500 of them to obey the gospel, when they go back home, they'll take the gospel with them when they go back. So that's what we're hoping to do. All right, then, Genesis chapter 18. That's where we are this morning. And Abraham is in the plains of Mamre, and he's sitting in the tent of his door, the door of his tent, one or the other, and he sees 3 men coming. Now, when you read all of this, it's difficult, I think it's difficult, to know exactly all the intricate details of what's going on. It seems like the Lord is talking to Abraham, and he's communicating with him. He's done that before. It's not the first time the Lord's talked to Abraham. And then Abraham sees these 3 men coming, and they come, and they start talking with Abraham. And I don't know if God told Abraham these are angels, or if he just figured it out, or what. But then they began to ask him questions, and sometimes you have to look and read and see who's doing the talking. Is it the Lord doing the talking, or is it one of the angels doing the talking? And when you go back and look at the word Lord, as it's used there in verse 1, and the Lord appeared unto him. The King James translators that translated our Bible for us, when every letter is capitalized, that's what they call the tetragrammaton, which is the Hebrew word there is Yahweh or Jehovah. And that always refers to God and to God only. Now, later on, Sarah is going to say, well, who would have thought that my Lord, she calls him my Lord, and they're small. And that's calling someone master or showing respect to someone, like you would a governor or someone of that nature. So the translators of the King James use the word Lord in verse 13 14, 17, 19, 20, 22, 26, and 33. And then there's 3 or 4 verses there that the small one is used. So as I said, I find it a little difficult sometimes, and it doesn't matter if the angel is speaking on behalf of God. God sent the angel. So if the angel has a comment or asks a question or says something, then that's God having the comment or asking the question or saying something. Now, the angels appear unto him, and they appear to him in the form of a man, or of men. How would you expect angels to appear? I mean, what does an angel look like? Well, we don't know. They're heavenly messengers, and God sent a messenger, and rather than scaring someone to death, why wouldn't he look like a man so that you could talk to him? And there's a passage in Hebrews 13, verse 2, be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. So he said there that there have been people that's talking to angels and they didn't even know about it. And maybe that's the case here with Abraham in the beginning, but he does figure out some things as they move along in the conversation. He sees them coming, and the first thing he wants to do is show hospitality. This Eastern culture is a culture of hospitality, and it still is hospitality. Here are these 3 strangers. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to wash their feet because they've been traveling with their sandals, and we're going to see if they've had something to eat. Basically, every time we go to Southeast Asia, when we get off the airplane, if it's 6 o'clock in the afternoon or midnight, some of the first words that come out of their mouth is, have you eaten yet? They'll take you right there and feed you because you're hungry. You've been traveling and you're weary, so have you eaten yet? And yeah, okay, if you say no, they're going to take you out to eat. Or if you say, well, it's been 6 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours, well, we're going to feed you. That's part of their culture to do that. And that's what's taking place here. And he gets some water. He goes into the herd and he gets a young calf. And he tells Sarah, his wife, what every wife likes to hear. Hurry up and fix something. We got company. Get in there and cook something. We got company out here. Yeah, that's the words we love to hear, isn't it? So she's going to fix the bread, and he's going to fix butter and milk and a calf, and they're going to stand there and they're going to eat. And verse 9, they're there eating, and as I said, I don't know at what point Abraham figured out they were angels. If God told him that, if they told him, I don't know. But they said to him, where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, she's in the tent. Now, I don't know about you, but if a stranger walked up to my door and said, where's Carolyn? Well, how do you know what her name is? How do you know my wife's name? So that's maybe would raise a flag. Where's Sarah? Well, she's in the tent. Why do you ask? And how do you know Sarah? So they want to know. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. When you back up and see the angel talking, this seems to be the angel talking here. He says he's going to restore unto Sarah the time of life. Sarah has been barren all of her life. That's, to have a child would have been her goal in their culture, and to have a son would have been their goal in their culture. So she's never been able to have a son. Never been able to have a child at all. Now, if she went the first 30, 40, 50 years and couldn't have a child, and now she's 90 years old, you just pretty well say it's hopeless, wouldn't you? You're not going to have a child if you haven't had one by this particular time. She's well stricken in years, and she is told that this time she's gone through menopause and her body is no longer capable at this time of producing a child as it would have been when she was younger. So she's even past that. And now she's told, that's coming back to you. Well, that would be a shock to be told that by a stranger. But he's an angel, and he's telling him what God said. So she says, we're old, and Abraham and Sarah were old, were well stricken of age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. So menopause, she's not a candidate to have a child. And Sarah laughed within herself. She laughed within herself, and she said, me? You think I'm going to have a child? That's funny. Yeah, I couldn't have a child back when I was young, and when I was in my prime, I couldn't have one. Now I've passed the age of having children, and I'm almost 100 years old, and now I'm going to have a child. Well, that's funny. That's funny. And the Lord said unto Abraham, so now, the Lord says, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I of surety bear a child, which am old? Why did she laugh? Well, you recall there, she first denied that she laughed. And said, well, I didn't laugh. But maybe she's saying, I didn't laugh out loud. Nobody heard me. How do you know I laughed? I laughed within myself. And he said in verse 14, and this is a verse that we need to maybe camp out on here for a minute or two, is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. You're laughing, or you're not believing that this is a reality. Is this too hard for God? God, who can create Adam and Eve out of the dust of the ground and breathe in their nostrils the breath of life. God, who can create the sun, the moon, the stars by just speaking His word. Is this too hard for God to take a woman who is past the age of natural childbearing and cause her to have a child? It's interesting, too, that the way this was done, God works with the laws of nature, but He does something with the laws of nature. He didn't say, well, you're going to go out in the woods and find a child under a tree. No, she's going to have a child the way women have children, but her body's not capable of having it the normal way. So God is going to intervene and do something to cause her body to be able to have that child. And that's interesting, how that God used, in a sense, natural laws, but He did something with natural law to make it to where it wasn't, as we said, just we find a child out there somewhere, or you wake up one day and there's a child in the house. That's not the way it took place. Is anything too hard for God? No. But we don't want to get too far with that particular statement. I hear sometimes people, and I understand where they're coming from, but they haven't thought through this. When they say, God can do anything. He's God.
People tend to put limitations on it.
Yeah. But when you think about it, He has placed limitations on Himself.
Yeah.
Can God sin?
No.
Well, wait a minute. Somebody said, God can do anything He wants to do. Well, that's beyond, He wouldn't be God if He did that. Can He not exist? Can He say, well, I'm just going to cease to exist for the next 5 minutes, then I'm going to start back existing in 5 minutes? No. From everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. Can He tell a lie?
No.
The Bible says God that cannot lie. So He's placed limits on Himself of things that He can't do because of the moral aspect of it. It's not like, sometimes people say, well, we're talking about what to do to be saved. And somebody says, well, God can save us any way He wants to. Well, if He's come up with a plan that He's told us, this is the way you're to be saved, then that's the way you're to be saved. Yeah, God was powerful enough to save people during the days of Noah and the ark in a different way. But God chose that all the saved would be on the ark. Was He not powerful enough to save somebody out of the ark? Yes, He was. But that was His will, is everybody that gets in the ark is going to be saved. If you're not in the ark, you're not going to be saved. So we have to remember that. And we don't want to go wrong on either end of that particular situation, looking at it. Notice, at the time appointed, God, they've been all confused over this for years. We're going to have a son. And Sarah and Abraham have tried to help God sort of out of a difficult situation. We'll give you my handmaid, and you can have the son with a handmaid. No, that's not what God was going to do. Abraham did have a son by that handmaid, but that's not the child of promise. You're going to have a son. And back over here, when they're worried that it couldn't be done, God says, we're not ready yet. We're going to wait a few more years. And we're going to do it over here. So here she is, Julia, 100 years old, 90 years old. And God says, now, next year, at the time that I appoint, who's in charge?
God.
God's in charge.
Always
Yeah.
in control.
Yeah.
Always in control.
Yeah. That baby's not going to be born 3 months from now. It's not going to be born 10 years from now. At this time next year. And God specified and gave some insight in detail into when that child was going to come. Now, what do you think that did with her? She said, if there are doubts in her mind, well, I'll never be able to have a child. I'm so old. But now I do remember God said about this time next year, and lo and behold, about this time next year, she's feeling a little bit different. And saying, well, I think maybe I'm with child. Well, I know I'm with child now. So, and then she would think back and say, well, God said that would take place at this particular time. So God is in charge. God knew what he was doing, knew what he said what he meant. Shall I bear a child when I'm old, she says? Whereas I couldn't all these other years. Why would I be able to now? Anything too hard for God? At the time appointed I'll return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not. For she was afraid, and she said, nay, or he said rather, nay, but you did laugh. You did laugh. And I don't know, that you read about Abraham that in the book of Hebrews, that his faith staggered not. But that's not a commentary on his whole life. He got to that point that his faith staggered not. But his faith did stagger a few occasions, didn't it? One occasion when he was going down into Egypt. And if I tell the truth that Sarah's my wife, they'll kill me. Well, isn't God powerful enough to protect you? Don't you have faith in God? He can't kill you if God don't want him to kill you. So I'm going to lie and say she's my sister. Well, his faith wasn't what it ought to have been right there. And hers wasn't either. And you read that in the lives of lots of individuals in the Old Testament. Moses was a great man, great faith, but on some occasions he didn't show it, did he? David was a man after God's own heart, but there were occasions David didn't show the faith that he should have. And I guess that just shows that in the life of anyone, we all have our weaknesses and we all have our times that we don't do what we ought to do. Now, as we move on down to verse 16, Abraham goes with the three to Sodom, the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities that are around that area. And he says he wasn't going to hide from Abraham what he was about to do. And again, when you read that, it says, the men rose up from thence, that seems to be the angels, and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on their way. And the Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham the thing which I will do? Is the Lord talking to the angels? And in so doing, but it seems that they're all in this together, so to speak. That it's not that he's, well, who are these three men? And if God's talking to them and having this conversation, maybe he now understands at some point, these are angels that I've been talking with. And he says, I'm not going to hide what I'm about to do. God is not under no obligation to tell you, to tell me what he's about to do, is he? He has no obligation to say, I'm going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. He can do what he wants to do. But he says, I'm going to tell you what I'm about to do. Seeing that Abraham shall surely be a great mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. Through his seed, he's going to be a great and powerful nation. And all the nations of the earth would be blessed through him or through his seed. Christ is coming through his seed. So the Christ is going to be a blessing to the whole world. Now look at this compliment that God paid Abraham and what he said to Abraham. And you just wonder and sort of wish, I guess you'd say, that God felt that way about me, or he felt that way about you. This is what God says about Abraham. Verse 19, for I know him, that he will command his children, his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, and to do just and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. I know Abraham. He's going to be the right leader and example for his family. He's going to do the right thing. And that indeed is a compliment that Jehovah God paid to Abraham. Because he said the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great. And because their sin is very grievous. The cry. That expression is used different times in the Bible. When Cain killed Abel, his blood was crying up from the ground for justice. And that's a figure of speech there. But justice needs to be done. He's been murdered. This was cold-blooded murder. Something needs to be done. There's a cry for the right thing to be done. During the days of Noah, all these wicked people that were on the face of the earth, there's a cry in the life of the righteous people that's crying out to God, how long, O Lord? How long are you going to let this go on? These people need to be dealt with. They need to be judged. The city of Sodom and Gomorrah, the extreme southern part of Palestine, near the Dead Sea. Now, a lot of speculation. I don't know that we'll ever know, but I've read some things about the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea has more salt in it than the ocean. And the Dead Sea has nothing living in it. There's no fish living in the Dead Sea. If you ever see somebody fishing in the Dead Sea, tell them they're wasting their time. There's no fish there. Nothing there. Why? Some have speculated that when God rained fire and brimstone from heaven, that went into the Dead Sea and caused that to be that way. I don't know. We're not given any direction one way or another to that. But God sees the sin of the city. Now, sin is sin. But God didn't destroy every city in the world for sin, for a particular sin. Some cities might be given to gambling. God didn't destroy the city for gambling. Corinth was given over to fornication with their temples of idolatry. He didn't destroy that. But here's the sin of sodomy. The city is named after its sin. Homosexual activity, men with men. And in the Old Testament, God said that's an abomination. It's an abomination. And should not be thought of or practiced, and those that were to engaged in that were to be put to death. And we have people today that want to try to twist God's word around and have us believe that God loves everybody and nothing wrong with homosexuality. Yes, there's something wrong with homosexuality.
He does love everybody. It's Dr. Wayne's.
Yeah. And here, the Bible even says of this sin that it's against nature.
Yeah,
It's against nature. It's not a normal thing. And the animal kingdom, it's lower than the animal kingdom. It's lower than dogs and other animals. And God said, I've had enough. I'm going to destroy them for that particular sin. He said it's a very grievous sin. And he said it's always been, everywhere you go in the Old Testament, it's always been a sin. It was a sin under the patriarchal age. It's a sin under the Mosaical age. It's a sin today. It's just sin. Now, we have to be careful, I guess. We don't want to get on a crusade that we make one sin. Everybody that's committing this sin ought to be killed, and let everybody else alone that commits these other sins. We don't want to be like that. I heard a guy one time in his sermon he was preaching. He said something to that effect. He said the people that would commit this sin, they ought to all be rounded up, taken out, and all shot. Well, who's going to shoot them? A guy is a fornicator going to shoot a homosexual? Is a liar going to shoot a homosexual? A thief going to shoot a homosexual? You know, you got sins. And I know the consequences, as I said, of some sin is worse than others. But we want to be careful that we don't just pick out one and say, oh, that's just the worst sin ever, and we hate everybody, and we'd like to kill everybody that commits that sin. No. God would like everybody that commits that sin to repent. And they can. 1 Corinthians 6. When he said, don't be deceived. The unrighteous can't inherit the kingdom of God. Be not deceived. Fornicators, adulterers, abusers themselves of mankind. And he goes on. Can be saved. And then he said, and such were some of you. But you're washed, you're sanctified, you're justified. Studied the Bible with a man a few years ago that was had been a homosexual. And talked to him and baptized him. And he truly had changed his life. But I asked him some questions that I'd never had the opportunity to sit down and talk to somebody about. And I asked him, I said, when you decided that you wanted a man to be with other men, I said, is that a choice you made in your own head? Or were you forced to do that? Did you have you just had to do that? He said, no, it's a choice. And he was very open and honest. And if you stop and think about it, all sexual activity is a choice. You know, it's a choice that we make, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual. So he said, yeah, I knew it was wrong, but he said, I lived that lifestyle. And he said, my conscience bothered me the years that I was involved in that lifestyle. And he said, one day I woke up and I said, this is wrong. I know it's wrong. I'm not going to do this anymore. And he said, I walked away from it. And he said, I've never been involved in it again. And he'd found a real nice lady, and he'd married her. And they were both studying the Bible and baptized both of them. But he said, I chose to be a homosexual. And then he said, I chose to leave that and be a regular individual. And he said, and I know I could choose to go back if I wanted to. Because it's a choice that we make in our hearts. Murder is a choice. Lying, stealing, getting drunk, every sin that we commit is a choice. And this silly stuff that I was born that way, okay? How many babies have you ever seen that were born lying or stealing? You ever seen any babies born murderers? No, it's a choice that they make. And I'm not saying that society doesn't influence, it does. Society influences various aspects of it, but it's a choice that they make. So we're going to go down to the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. We're going to look it over. We're going to see what's going on. And they turned their faces. They went toward Sodom. Abraham stands before the Lord. Abraham drew near. And Abraham has got an interest in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. What's his interest there? Does he have real estate there? He's got family there. Now, I got a nephew over there. And he's got kids. He's got daughters. Some of his daughters are married. He's got sons, and they're married. He's got daughter-in-laws, and he's got daughters that are not married, and he's got a wife. But there's a family. And they traveled in sort of a herd-type situation anyway. So I don't know how big his flock and his brood was, but he's down there. And God's going to destroy it because of the wickedness. And Abraham begins to talk to God and said, well, are you going to destroy the righteous with the wicked? You're going to kill everybody down there? And there's some of them are righteous? And God carries the conversation with him, and God lets Abraham talk to him. If there's 50 righteous people there, would you spare it? Yeah, I'll spare it. Because God knew exactly how many righteous people were there. Well, what about 40? Yeah. 45. And I guess this is where we get this expression of Jewing someone down. Really? I mean, that probably wouldn't be politically correct to say that in the day and age in which we live, but here's Jewing someone down. You start out with this price and this price and this price. So 50 righteous, no 40, what about 30, what about 20? And he's coming on down, and he's cautious. He knows who he's talking to. He's talking to Jehovah God. And he's walking on sort of thin ice and saying, if it please thee, O Lord, or what about 30, what about 20? And I'll speak yet but once more. Maybe I'm at the end of my limit here. Maybe you've heard about enough, God. So he says, if there be found 10 righteous, God said he'd spare it for 10. What if he had asked for 5? And if God had given it to him, would he have spared it? Were there 5 righteous people there? Count them. Who came out? Lot, his wife, and 2 daughters. That's 4. And the daughter, or the wife rather, looked back. She didn't make it.
She was warned not to.
Yeah, she was warned not to. So if he had gone on down and said, well, what about 5? And God said, yeah, I'll spare it for 5. Still wouldn't have been spared. Because there wasn't 5 there. And think about that with the flood. If Noah had said to God, Lord, if there's 10 righteous people on the face of the earth, surely you wouldn't destroy the earth. He couldn't have found 10 because there's only 8. Only 8.
Do we know what the population was?
No, I don't think so. But it was one of the big cities there, so I don't know how many.
The family who were the ones crying out because they were the righteous ones. They were the ones that were pleasing God.
But well, the few righteous that were there, and there wasn't that many of them that were there of his family.
He chose to stay.
Yeah. They neglected, and when he talked to them, you remember it says that he seemed as one that mocked to them when he's trying to get them to do the right thing. We're not going to be destroyed. That's silly. That's foolish. And they chose to stay.
Just like going back to Noah, he took the choice of Noah when he closed the door, because Noah could have had the same thoughts we just had. Well, I noticed that he's been righteous. He's been this, No, God closed the door, and that's sealed. Many are called, few are chosen. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody puts a limit on God. It's going to be 144,000. Don't put limitations on Him. He's in control. He's God. He's an awesome God. He's our God. But we have to abide and be obedient to Him, His Word. Because we needed a Savior. He gave us His only Son. And He gave us His only Word.
And in the mind of Abraham, he may have thought that he saved the family. Because if there was Lot and his wife, and he had daughters that were married, so that would have been at least 4 and their spouses. And then he had sons that were married, that would have been 4 more. And then his wife, so there would have been 10 or 12 there that would have been righteous. But as we said, couldn't even get 5. She looked back and became a pillar of salt. And they had lived in a very wicked and ungodly place. And why did they go there to start with? Remember? He had the choice to go over here or go over here. He lifted up his eyes and looked at the well-watered plains of the Jordan. He took his family. He made a decision for his family based on material things. And the material things didn't turn out too good for him.
Gain the world, lose your soul.
No. All right. Any comment, observation? We'll stop there. And we'll look next time to chapter 19, to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.